around and I see a sight that undescribable. Here is a young man standing with a rifle, pointing right at me.
Goldstein was shot in the hand. The 19-year-old suspect surrendered to police after initially fleeing the scene. 8 people were shot, 1 killed Sunday night while gathered at 2 cookouts on the same street in Baltimore. Police Commissioner Michael Harrison says it was not a random attack.
What we know right now is that a black male, no further description, approached and began firing into that crowd and then fled in the same direction. That appears to be extremely targeted from my 28 years of experience, and I believe everyone standing with me would believe that person was targeting 1, if not more, people in that crowd.
The gunman is on the run. Police have not revealed a motive. The U.S. and China may be close to striking a trade deal. The New York Times reports Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin says trade talks are entering a critical point. An American delegation heads to Beijing Monday. Chinese officials are then expected to come to Washington next week to possibly conclude the negotiations. The U.S. and China have been locked in a trade dispute for months, and while the talks are going well, President Trump has said the U.S. would walk away if China does not agree to its terms. Attorney General Bill Barr is scheduled to testify before the Senate and House Judiciary Committees this week. He's expected to address Robert Mueller's Russia investigation and the findings in the Mueller report. The special counsel identified 10 instances in which President Trump may have obstructed justice, but the report did not reach a conclusion as to whether the president committed crimes. This is Fox News.
Hey, it's Mom. Somebody forgot to thaw the chicken, so meet us at Chili's for 2 for $25. Oh, and congratulate your sister for making the basketball team. She's thrilled. Love you. See you at Chili's.
Enjoy 2 full meal combos for $25. An appetizer, 2 mouth-watering entrees like our crispy chicken breast, smoked barbecue quarter leg, or smoked jalapeno cheddar sausage. Served with corn on the cob and french fries. 2 bold combos for $25. A full-on meal deal available nightly for a limited time. Together, we Chili's.
The sky's the limit with Bank Pacific's secure MyCloud banking. You can access your account 24/7 with your smartphone, your computer, your iPad, or any other tablet. You can pay bills, set up alerts, check your balances, wire transfer money. It's never been easier. Enroll online or come on in and see one of our friendly staff. Digital Life, Digital Solutions. Bank Pacific.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender, member FDIC. Viva Bank Pacific.
A disturbing find inside a dolphin's belly.
The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission posting the contents of a deceased dolphin's stomach on social media. It includes 2 plastic bags and a shredded piece of balloon. Biologists discovering the garbage inside the stomach of the dolphin after it washed ashore on a Fort Myers beach. Marine biologists say there could be additional factors that led to the mammal beaching itself. The dolphin was described as emaciated and in poor health and was euthanized on site. Tom Graham, Fox News.
A mother says the flight crew and passengers on her flight from Tampa to Dallas last week saved her daughter's life. The Dallas Morning News reports the 11-month-old started seizing on the plane. The American Airlines crew members and passengers jumped in to help as medical professionals on board intervened. The baby's okay. The mother says she was in shock and would not have known what to do. Another documentary on singer R. Kelly is coming soon.
Lifetime's R. Kelly docuseries is getting a follow-up to the original Surviving R. Kelly, which chronicled sexual abuse allegations against the singer. The 2-hour special will be hosted by Soledad O'Brien and highlights the impact it had from changing the conversation to the charges against the singer after the series aired.
God, I can't take another day. I can't do this anymore.
More women came forward with allegations of abuse, and several weeks later, the Cook County Attorney's Office indicted Kelly on 10 felony counts of aggravated sexual assault involving 4 victims and spanning over a decade, ultimately leading to his arrest. It's set to premiere Saturday, May 4th at 10. Michelle Polino, Fox News.
Former Indiana Senator Richard Lugar died. Vice President Mike Pence issued a statement saying he worked tirelessly to bring pressure to end apartheid in South Africa and enforce treaties that destroyed Soviet weapons of mass destruction. He was also a Presidential Medal of Freedom recipient. Lugar was 87 years old. I'm Richard Jordan, and this is Fox News.
Do you know someone who has difficulty following conversation in noisy places or turns up the TV a little too loud? These may be signs of a hearing loss. Ross Hearing Aids specializes in hearing evaluations, custom-fit hearing aids using the latest in wireless digital technology, and custom-fit hearing protectors. Call Ross Hearing Aids today to schedule a complimentary hearing consultation. 637-HEAR, 637-HEAR. Ross Hearing Aids, located across Shirley's in Harmon.
Docomo Pacific's all-new business bundles provide tailored solutions to help your business become a better business. Choose from our Business Basic, Essential, or Value bundles and get unlimited talk and text, worry-free data at home and abroad, plus access to the fastest online speeds in the Marianas. Add on mobile or broadband lines and save up to 20% for each line. Email businesssales@docomopacific.com to find out which bundle provides the best solution for your business. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I was going to say that one more time and pound the table. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's how strongly I feel about that here in Tall Tales. And fortunately, I'm not the only one. I've got a couple of pieces to read here today. The first one comes from a website called The Hill. Trump tells NRA he's pulling us from arms trading. President Trump on Friday announced he's withdrawing U.S. support for an international arms trade treaty, the administration's latest move to distance the country from global agreements and institutions. Speaking at a National Rifle Association convention in Indianapolis, Trump said he would never ratify the United Nations Arms Trade Treaty that was signed by former President Obama in 2013. Under my administration, we will never surrender American sovereignty to anyone, Trump told the group, which erupted in applause. We will never allow foreign bureaucrats to trample on your Second Amendment freedoms. It's bad enough when we've got our own bureaucrats doing the trampling, much less bureaucrats from some other state. Trump signed paperwork instructing the Senate to halt the ratification process, held up the document as the crowd cheered, USA, USA, and then tossed his pen into the crowd. Maybe I ought to do that after I award the coveted, if I can find my blue pencil here, after I award the coveted blue star, just toss the pencil out into the crowd. What do you think, Real Joe Cruz?
I'm all for it, sir.
Yeah, we got such a huge crowd here in the broadcast booth, right?
Yes, sir.
Trump said he would not hold the NRA senior leadership, had not told the NRA senior leadership he was going to make the announcement during his speech, even though news outlets were told of the decision ahead of time. The treaty is designed to regulate the $70 billion international arms trade and prevent conventional arms being used by terrorists, human traffickers, and others. It was submitted to the Senate by the Obama administration in 2016, but was never ratified. Critics of the treaty, including the NRA and other conservative groups, said it would have infringed on national sovereignty, an argument rejected by Obama, who probably, more than most presidents that I'm familiar with, was interested in sort of forfeiting American sovereignty to international organizations as much as he could. The Trump administration was also worried the U.S. would be held to an unfair standard because the world's second and largest arms exporters, Russia and China, are not parties to the treaty. The U.S. is the world's #1 exporter. The U.S. already has significant controls in place to regulate our arms transfers. That is, now that Hillary Clinton is no longer Secretary of State, I would just add parenthetically. Roughly 100 countries have signed and ratified the treaty, and more than 2 others have signed but not ratified. Senator Bob Menendez, of Foreign Relations Committee ranking Democrat, said the U.S. withdrawal would, quote, turn back the clock on the little progress we've made to prevent illicit arms transfers, and is done only because of the Republicans' paralyzing fear of backlash from the NRA. The president, as you were, during his time in the Oval Office, Trump has pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Agreement and the Iran nuclear deal. His administration has also taken steps to curtail the influence of the International Criminal Court, a long-time project of White House National Security Advisor John Bolton. Bolton was among several aides who traveled with Trump to the NRA convention. Trump spent the bulk of his speech touting his efforts to crack down on illegal immigration, attacking the Russian investigation, and hitting Democrats as too extreme. So the big news is that the U.S. pulled out of this United Nations arms trade treaty, which in my humble estimation is a good idea. The treaty would have regulated the trade in small arms, which of course is what we're talking about here when we're talking about the Second Amendment. On the other side, we have the other side, the other gang on the Second Amendment. And here it goes. Progressive columnist thinks Kamala Harris' 2020 run should be canceled. Kamala Harris is a United States Senator, former Attorney General of California. She is one of the Democrat candidates, a candidate for the Democrat nomination for president. She's very close to the top of the pack, and she confessed. Anybody else, I guess, would just, if you're from a different party, you say, yeah, I own a gun. I think it's a good idea. But if you're a Democrat, it's more like a confession. 2 weeks ago, Kamala Harris, Democrat from California, confessed a truth that left progressive befuddled and conservatives arching an eyebrow. Let me see if I can arch an eyebrow. I can, yeah, I guess I can. Can you, yeah, hey, that's pretty good, Real Joe Cruz. Real Joe Cruz is much better than I am at arching an eyebrow.
That's how I became famous, sir.
I guess you must be a conservative if you're good at arching your eyebrow. Harris confessed a truth that left progressives befuddled and conservatives arching an eyebrow. Harris is the proud owner of a handgun. Oh, wow. I am a gun owner, and I own a gun for probably the reason a lot of people do, for personal safety. Harris said at a town hall meeting in Iowa, I was a career prosecutor. CNN, in reporting Harris' surprising revelation, gave the Democrat senator a great deal of latitude, calling her, quote, responsible in her ownership and suggesting that someone with her career duties might be forgiven for owning a gun. You notice how the words that the media uses to describe things, there's such a thing as denotation and connotation. And the lefty media is really good at using words that give rise to a particular connotation. Harris confessed to owning a gun. I guess she was on her way to Mass, huh? Yeah. She confessed to owning a gun. And then CNN said that she's a responsible gun owner, so she could be forgiven for owning a gun. I owned a gun when I was 12 years old. My dad took me down to Baxter's Sports Shop and bought me a single-shot 22 long rifle. And I went out and shot at rabbits and squirrels with it when I was a kid. And I don't think that I've ever been forgiven. I didn't know that I would need to be forgiven for that. But I guess now that I've confessed, I'm on the right track, right, Real Joe Cruz?
I forgive you, sir.
I'm not going to ask you,
I forgive you.
I'm not going to ask you a really pointed question like, have you ever owned a gun? I wouldn't want you to have to confess right here on the air.
I'd rather not say, sir.
Yeah, I can understand. That's a really damning admission to try to get someone to sign up for right here in front of our international radio listening audience. The weight of that phrase was a reminder of the personal risk Harris has faced in her career. A Harris campaign aide said the weapon she owns is a handgun, which she keeps locked up as a responsible gun owner. According to the aide, the handgun was purchased years ago. It's probably one of those old flintlocks, right? Despite CNN's attempts to soften Harris's apostasy, and that's a good word, right? For the left, to own a gun makes you an apostate. Despite the CNN's attempt to soften Harris's apostasy on the guns rights issue, which is not an insignificant right turn given her history of emotional calls to ban assault rifles and preference for enacting stricter gun control measures, at least once progressive thinks Harris' 2020 presidential run should be canceled. Peter Funt, the longtime host of the show Candid Camera. I wonder if he's the son of Alan Funt, who I think invented the show. Peter Funt, the longtime host of the show Candid Camera, who later became a prolific op-ed writer for high-profile news outlets, wrote in USA Today. Well, if he wrote it in USA Today, I'm surprised we didn't see it on the editorial page of the Daily News. He wrote in USA Today that Harris gun ownership disqualifies her from running for president on the Democrat ticket. When it comes to gun ownership in America, presidential aspirant Kamala Harris has shot herself in the foot. Funt wrote on Friday. The former TV host said Harris should have gotten rid of her gun the minute her career changed and she was no longer in need of the protection a handgun affords. She probably should have gone out on the Golden Gate Bridge, stopped in the middle of the bridge and just tossed that gun right into the Tossie, right? While progressives support the legal reforms Harris advocates, they also seek a shift in gun culture. That means setting an example for why guns, particularly handguns, are part of the problem, not the solution. Kamala Harris doesn't seem to have the courage to concede that owning a handgun for protection is a bad idea. Instead, she has given voters a real choice. This is a quote from Funt. She has given voters a real choice. Back candidates who care enough about gun control to not own handguns, or support the only major Democrat contender who has one and won't throw it away. That's it. It's unclear why Funt is singling out Harris. The WAPO reported earlier in April that 6 of 18 Democrat presidential contenders are firearms voters. I'd sure like to have the names of every one of those 6 people. How dare they? Joe Biden, who declared his intention to run Thursday, brings that number to 7. So Joe occasionally packs heat. You wouldn't think he'd need it with all this Secret Service protection. If Democrats have designed on ever winning again, they'll need to begin representing their increasingly progressive base who wants stricter and stricter gun reform, if not outright abolishment of the Second Amendment, or they'll need to scale back their own rhetoric on gun control and hope their voters catch up. Boy, that's really something. Confess. Forgive. You know, it's really too bad that we aren't able to vote here on Guam in presidential races. And you know, because there are people that, you know, I've gone to all of the presidential votes we've had. I know they don't count, but I do it anyhow. I also vote in the Republican primary elections, and I'm very happy to say that in 2004, I was a delegate to the Republican National Convention in New York and cast one of the votes that gave the nomination to George W. Bush. So it's good to, you know, it's good to have the opportunity to vote for people. But when I read stuff like this, I'd really like to be able to vote against some of these people. Confess. Forgive. Wow. Okay, so from there, we go to the Zemi-Ikotny. Got my pencil. Okay, so we start out with the Daily News, and surprise, surprise, as Private Gomer Pyle used to say, the Daily News wrote their own editorial, but we'll say more. Yeah, really. We'll have a little bit more on that later, and it's not, you're not going to like it, Daily News. Okay, so here's their view. Homeless need shelter and transit. On Friday, the Guam Homeless Coalition held annual Passport to Services event at the Chamorro Village Festival Huts. The homeless population has increased in the last year with a notable jump in the number of homeless families. There were 873 homeless individuals and 300 households compared with 854 and 265 last year. A focus of the event was to provide supplies, referral, and services to homeless veterans by bringing together social service providers and programs in a convenient location to provide services and resources such as free immunizations, legal services, employment assistance, health care, and information on housing and veterans assistance. The event is held to provide assistance to those who face multiple barriers to these types of services, notably transportation. Well, I've given you my suggestion as how to fix that on more than one occasion. Get rid of the Guam Regional Transit Authority and all of the overhead costs involved. Reimburse worthy people for cab fare and let it go at that, unless we have a real bus system. And if we had a real bus system, we could let the unfortunates ride for nothing. But we don't have a real bus system. Free bus pickup service to the event was provided from the Daydados Mayor's Office and the Tumuning Mayor's Office. Well, that's convenient since the Tumuning Mayor is also the chairperson. Did I say that right, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
The chairperson.
You hit it, sir.
Of the Guam Regional Transit Authority. They provided transit. While this annual outreach effort is a good idea, it would be much more helpful and convenient if it was held on a regular basis, perhaps at rotating locations throughout the island to make it easier to access for homeless individuals. And while our regular efforts to provide food to the homeless, what's lacking are other basic services. Shelters to keep them safe at night, places for them to take a shower and do laundry. Now, I've thought about that on more than one occasion, and I've never, fortunately, I've never been homeless, but I've done a lot of traveling, and I've been in situations where I didn't have a place to sleep at that particular time. Making transportation connections or waiting for something or whatever. And so what I always did is I always carried a padlock with me, and I always looked around for showers. So, and carried my shower kit in my suitcase. And oftentimes, if you're just in transit, you could find a place to take a shower, lock your stuff up in a locker, take a shower, and go on about your business. And I've often thought that if we could do that for these folks that don't have a pillow, maybe we could, what's that guy's name on TV with My Pillow?
I forget his name, sir.
He
sponsors Bill O'Reilly or
just about everything.
Yeah.
That guy is one of my favorite actors. I'm surprised I can't remember his name. So, if we couldn't provide a place for people to sleep, perhaps a place to take a shower on a regular basis, a place to store your gear in a lock with a padlock on it, and in this climate, be a whole lot better than what I've seen an awful lot of people try to do to carry on their lives, carrying all of their stuff around with them, or not here, but you go to the States, you see the shopping cart ladies around some of the cities, etc. So I've often thought that might be a good idea. If you started that, the next thing would perhaps to consider would be a bunkhouse. An open squad bay with cots, etc. Strict rules as to who could stay, who can't stay. Of course, it'd have to be. This would be a really tough one in the moral climate we live in now. But it would have to be separated by sex. There would be some people in the community who would say, "Well, then you're going to have 20 different bunkhouses, one for each sex." Real Joe Cruz. If you do a little travel and you see these youth hostels and you see things like this that can accommodate a lot of young people at a really low cost, so maybe an approach like that might be helpful. Now, once upon a time, during my lifetime, actually, there were things called the poor houses. Walworth County had a place where poor people could stay out in the area that we call the county farm. And people who had no place else to go could come out there and stay. They'd get 3 squares a day and a cot. Obviously, there was no cable TV in those days, so they didn't have to worry about that. So maybe something like that. Now, I know the left would go crazy over that. You can't do that to those people. They have to have decent, safe, sanitary housing. Just because they don't have any money doesn't mean that, why should only people who have money have decent, real houses? That's what you'd get from the left on that. But these are things that are worth exploring as far as I'm concerned. But even then, the emphasis ought to be to try to get people in a position where they can survive by supporting themselves. Now, again, in a lot of cities, there are numerous street corners where people will go, that are gig corners. So guys that want to go out and do yard work or lawn work or whatever will go and congregate around these corners, and people will come along and hire them for one day. Well, I hear my favorite song here, Take 5, playing in the background, so I'll come back to this after that.
Attention homeowners, MRE solar energy systems now come with battery storage for zero money down. This means that your home will have power even when the island power isn't available, like during power outages or during and after storms. The inconvenience of not having power for your home is a thing of the past. It's solar with battery storage exclusively by Micronesia Renewable Energy. Don't be left in the dark. Call 632-2613 for a free consultation. MRE, the smarter choice.
In illness and in wellness, Calvo's Select Care is health care that is there for you. That's why over 80% of the Guam medical community places their trust and insures with us. We offer our members wellness and fitness programs for a healthier lifestyle and provide a comprehensive medical network on and off island to help members from unexpected illnesses. Contact Calvo's Select Care today for more information.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
Yeah, I took a peek at Facebook here during the break, and Mike Lindell. So the really hard question here is, will Mike Lindell be nominated for the Best Actor at the next Oscars? Because he gets more screen time than just about any other actor that I'm familiar with. Okay, so I was talking about the homeless, and if somebody wanted to do something, maybe we could start up a gig corner, a place where people would know if you want to hire a guy for one day or a half a day or whatever. Come down and take a look and see who you could hire. Now, again, the left is not going to like this because you're going to say, these people won't have any benefits. They won't have health insurance. They won't accrue time for Social Security the way most people treat them. So it would be better just to let people kind of stumble along and do nothing than to give people the opportunity to do a little day labor. Now, as I say, I've seen this in large American cities. No doubt there's some exploitation, but it's not a perfect world. So if the only choices are to have large groups of people sleeping in the bus shelters or on the steps of the cathedral, etc., with no job, no income, and perhaps no hope of having a chance of accumulating those things, then I would respectfully suggest that all of my brilliant ideas that I just shared with you this afternoon be taken into consideration. Okay, so the editorial winds up saying it's also difficult to provide a roof over your head if you lack transportation, because you can't hold down a job if you can't get to and from work in a reliable and timely manner. We need elected officials to work much harder to change this. And once again, the solution is this. We've got several different bus companies. We got the ideal situation for mass transit, because the biggest expense in a bus company is your rolling stock. And for most bus companies, a city bus company needs to have the most buses during the commuting time to and from work. And the rest of the time, the buses are underutilized. A bus only makes money for you when it's on the road collecting fares. So we could start out, we could have a single bus company that handled the Liberty runs from the bases early morning and late at night. That same bus company could then take the kids to and from school. That same bus company could handle the tourist runs from San Vitores Boulevard to the two malls, etc. And that same bus could also be the general commuter bus. And as I mentioned before, if I could walk out of out to Marine Corps Drive in my place in Jigo and know that a bus would come along in 10 minutes, I'd ride it down here to Tall Tales. It'd be cheaper. Yeah, I would. It would be cheaper, and besides that, I'd gain about 20 minutes, actually 40 minutes every day, because I can read if I'm riding on a bus. If I'm driving, I can't read. And if you want to be a radio talk show host and have some idea of what you're talking about, you got to do a little reading. But, you know, all of the different times that I've ever tried to take the bus on Guam, I'm just reacquainted with my absolute inability to undergo open-ended waiting. The bus is supposed to come, but nobody knows what time the 2 o'clock bus will arrive. Probably sometime between 4 and 5. And so if we're going to stumble along like that, nobody's going to want to ride the bus. And if our customer base is only people who have no other choice but to take the bus because they have no money, it's not going to be viable. So put together a real viable bus system, and if you did, and it were profitable, then you could let those who we're talking about here, the homeless, give them a shit and let them ride for nothing. But to put together a bus system to carry the homeless back and forth to their jobs, it's just not going to work. It has never worked, and it never will work. So I'll give the Daily News this. They actually wrote an editorial today. And on that subject, I'm going to go backwards here for a moment, and I'm going to go back to something that's dated July 22, 2018, and it's titled Zemi Ikotni. Now, when I first brought the Tall Tales over here to the point, I did the read-ins. That I did a little bit of one the other day, you know, kind of the rules of engagement for Tall Tales, what it is that we do, what it is that we don't do, etc. And I haven't talked about the rules of engagement for Zemi Ikotni, but I'll take a crack at it. This is what I wrote in July 22. The fourth estate is a societal or political force or institution whose influence is not consistently or officially recognized. Fourth estate most commonly refers to the news media, especially print media, print journalism, or the press. Well, originally there were three estates. The first estate was the clergy, the second estate, nobility, and the third estate, commoners. This was back in England. The fourth estate of the press, and was coined in 1837, reflecting their increasing prominence and power. The fourth estate. And I had a definition here for meat. I don't really need to read that. And I defined edgy, at the forefront of a trend, experimental or avant-garde, cutting edge, on the edge. That's what we wanted editorials to be, edgy. We wanted them to be topical, referring to the topics of the day or place, a local or temporary interest, a topical novel, a topical novel, topical references. We wanted the editorials to be hard-hitting, uncompromisingly direct and honest, especially in revealing unpalatable facts. So that was the criteria by which I judge editorials when I'm wielding this powerful blue pencil. And so I'm going to divert for a moment from the Daily News editorial to a column that appeared in the Post. And you'll understand why as soon as I get into it. The title of the column is Local Newspapering and the Fourth Estate. Let's see, last week, this column discussed how daily newspapers were historically structured, their different sections, the importance of newspaper opinion pages, and the fact that those pages were the real heart of any daily newspaper. Sadly, the average citizen many times has difficulty differentiating between news and opinion, especially when you read, the mainstream media like USA Today, WAPO, New York Times. Unfortunately, broadcast and print journalists have taken advantage of this reality and inserted opinion in areas that should clearly be reserved for hard news. Or as they say, just give me the facts and keep your opinion to yourself. Now, if you're looking for an opinion, 93.3 on your FM dial, that's where you get opinion. You get mine and Ray Gibson's and guys like Rush and Sean and what's his name? Brian, our co-workers here on The Point. This has successfully confused the public, and in many cases, particularly in the broadcast arenas, this has literally obliterated the lines between news, entertainment, and opinion. But the real heart of a newspaper, particularly a small community newspaper, continues to remain the local opinion pages such as these, like the opinion page in the Post. These pages give you perspective such as this, along with differing opinions from throughout the community in the form of thoughts of individual columnists. This allows you to read and learn how to look at the same subject from different angle. In turn, this broadens your perspective on a wide variety of subjects, and in so doing makes you better and more broadly educated citizen and voter. Is it important for citizens to be informed, Real Joe Cruz?
Absolutely, sir.
Tell me more.
Oh, well, while the Constitution may set forth rights and liberties, only the citizens can maintain and guarantee those freedoms. Active and informed citizenship, it's not just a right, it's a duty.
It's a duty. Okay, so all of you out there in our international radio listening audience today are fulfilling that duty. You are maintaining your position as informed citizens. This allows you to read and learn how to look at the same subject from different angles. In turn, this broadens your perspective on a wide variety of subjects, and in so doing makes you better and a more broadly educated citizen and voter. Historically, the people who built these pages each day included the newspaper's very personal local opinion about something that was truly important to the community, something the majority of readers could sink their teeth into and either strongly agree or disagree with. How many times have I ragged on the Daily News, for running the journalistic equivalent of pablum on their editorial page? Generally, the team within the newspaper who wrote and agreed upon these editorials was made up of the editorial page editor, the editor, and the publisher. At times, citizens groups were also invited to share their individual thoughts and opinions as well. It's what the Daily News calls the Sunday Forum. I'm going to have to get after them on that one, too. As mentioned last week, these opinion efforts for the newspaper itself were written by seasoned journalists and were the collaborative effort to clearly inform you as to how the newspaper team felt about that particular subject. At times, they were also written to take local politicians and business leaders to task. That's what I like, when we take politicians and business leaders to task. When the newspaper believed it was required for the longer-term betterment of the community as a whole, this work earned newspapers the title of the Fourth Estate. With rare exception, this critical piece of newspaper seems to be disappearing. Last Saturday, the competing newspaper on Guam, now he's talking about the Daily News, and remember, Lee Weber used to be the publisher of the Daily News, ran an opinion piece titled, quote, "Democracy's Biggest Loser and Trump's Resistance," close quote, under our view on their Sunday editor, as you were on their Saturday editorial page. As I read the editorial, it struck to me that it didn't really sound like something that anyone from their staff may have written. Haven't I had that same feeling more than once, Real Joe? When I then Googled the first few sentences of the editorial, it was the work of the newspaper's mother paper, USA Today, and not anyone from the Guam paper. But they allowed the reader to believe it was theirs. So I guess from now on, when I see one of these suspicious editorials, I got to Google it.
Yeah, because their mom did their homework.
In my day, now here comes the big P word. Fasten your seat belts for the P word. In my day, plagiarism, using someone else's work labeled as your own, would get you fired. Writing daily editorial opinion pieces is not an easy task. That said, it remains the responsibility of every good daily newspaper, if it is truly to act as the fourth estate within its community. Okay, so I'm kind of thinking that maybe I have to invent a new term, maybe the 3.1 estate. 3.11 estate. Okay, so I've done this before, but it doesn't happen very often. I'm giving the columnist from the Post, Lee Weber, the coveted blue star. Okay, now Lee Weber's column appears in the Post, and now I'm going to go to the Post. And the Post, to their credit, usually runs their own stuff, and if they don't, if it's from WAPO, they don't try to fool you into thinking that they did it themselves. It's not like the Real Joe Cruz says. It's not one of those where the kid turns it in with his name on it, but his mother actually did his homework. And the title is, "We Can Do Better. Children Must Be Safe in Bus Stops." Thanks to concerned residents who shared photos on social media Friday of a man sitting in a school bus stop in Santa Rita without pants, the attention of police and mental health personnel was called to resolve the issue. On the opposite side of the island in Jigo, a school bus stop was not fit for school children to seek shelter, and while waiting their ride, a homeless man has turned the bus stop into his own domain, littering it with garbage and other hazards. This problem, unfortunately, isn't isolated to these two bus stops. There are other hazards in bus stops island-wide. Some are occupied by homeless residents. Others are too close to vehicle traffic. Some school bus stops do have makeshift traffic barriers, in some cases boulders or traffic dividers, what I would refer to as a Jersey bounce, to help protect children from being struck by vehicles. There are school bus stops occupied by packs of stray dogs. There are bus stops with concrete roofs that have shown signs of cracks, potentially exposing students to the possibility of falling concrete chunks causing injury. There are bus stops that reek of urine and feces. In some bus stops where students wait before sunrise, there aren't functioning streetlights to help keep them safe, or there are no sidewalks around to ensure they navigate their way to the bus stop safely. The sad part about this, in addition to exposing our school children to various forms of physical risk, is the unspoken word we as a community are saying to our future generations. It's the message that we don't care enough to protect them from some of the problems we have the power to fix. We don't do enough or mobilize enough as a community to look after their safety. When school children see this lack of care, they may think that adults don't value them all that much. Some kids will rise above this and other challenges and strive harder to get out of this difficult situation. But even those who do manage to continue to keep their spirits up for now may one day, when they're able to pick up their bags, leave the island, and rarely, if ever, come back. They find the feeling of home somewhere else. We like saying our youth are our future and our priority. But what they see is sometimes to the contrary. Now, I know that these words will hardly leave my lips when Angel Sablon will call a special meeting of the Mayor's Council. They'll be right on top of this. They'll comply with the open government law, and they will design a plan to solve these problems in their respective villages with these bus stops. You know, they don't pay Angel Sablon $100,000 a year for just sitting around doing nothing. So I got high hopes on this one. Okay, I'm going to come back from that short break. I will award the Blue Star.
If you've ever struggled for breath, you know what a scary experience it is. Whether you have asthma, emphysema, COPD, lung cancer, or another respiratory illness, the right medical treatment makes all the difference. GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic has the latest technology and respiratory equipment, staffed by world-class pulmonologists. Make an appointment today with GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic and start breathing easier. GRMC, where patients are partners.
This is Ronnie. Ronnie is about to break his piggy bank.
Come on, piggy bank.
Ronnie wants to upgrade his smartphone.
And this piggy's gonna help me.
If Ronnie had signed up for GTA's handset payment option, he could have selected a new smartphone with an affordable monthly plan.
I could have what?
Exactly. Sign up for HBO at GTA and don't break the bank.
I'm sorry, piggy bank.
Terms and conditions apply. Visit gta.net for more information. GTA.
So I actually have to make a decision today, since both newspapers actually wrote editorials contrary to the usual custom of the Daily News. And I'll have to say it's pretty close. But I like the Post just a little better. So today, the coveted Blue Star goes to the Post. Of course, the Post hasn't. The Post does have an advantage, because the more you do something, the better you get at it. So the Post writes editorials every day. The Daily News about what, twice a week, something like that. Okay, now I'm going to stick with editorials for a little while here. Probably I won't be able to finish this until after that big halftime show. But I've got some really interesting things on the card today, so you're going to want to stick around for those. For the Rangers, top on the card is this: California versus cannabis. So this is something that you'll like this. Well, you'll be interested in this item on the card. You probably won't like it, but it'll be something that you can contemplate when you're sitting around in the privacy of your own home tonight, enjoying life. And then I've got Miguel Bordallo versus Ill Intent, and this is a carryover from the Attorney General versus Joey Duenas and Tall Tales versus, that line of cases. And then I've got Tina Rose Munya Barnes versus the Guam Visitors Bureau. I've got Michael Bavacqua and Howard Zinn versus the Catholic Church. Noquette versus Torres, which is a repeat. The mainstream media versus Christians. And Cops versus Black Lives Matter. So as usual, every item on that card is really going to pique your interest. Going to keep you very interested. But I can't let this Sunday forum that appeared yesterday, I can't let it go without setting the record straight. So the Sunday forum, this was the question for the Sunday forum. What should the United States do to improve liberty for the people of Guam? I'm going to read it again. What should the United States do to improve liberty for the people of Guam? Now, if you expect people to answer your question, you kind of have to ask a question that's literate. This question is not literate. How do you improve liberty? Liberty is either something you have or you don't have. There are different degrees of liberty. It's kind of like me saying, you know, I'm a really humble guy. And of course, I'm very proud of my humility. But I'm also, you know, self-effacing. So can you tell me how I can improve my humility? You know, the question makes sense. What should the United States do to improve liberty for the people of Guam? Liberty is liberty. How do you improve it? It's a nonsense question. So first of all, let's define the word liberty. And you know, again, how do you improve liberty? It's like, how do you improve beauty? Beauty is beauty. It's a quality. How do you improve heat? Freedom. And as my favorite example, one that comes really close to home, humility, being such a humble person myself. And I have a couple of definitions here. Liberty is the right to exercise the rights enumerated by the Constitution or available or under natural law. The Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment declares that no state shall deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. That's one of the cornerstones of our rule of law. Here's another one. This is from Thomas Jefferson, a Democrat, by the way. Rightful liberty is unobstructed action according to our will within limits drawn around us by the equal rights of others. I do not add, quote, within the limits of the law, quote, quote, because the law is often but the tyrant's will, and always so when it violates the rights of individuals. That's from Thomas Jefferson. Okay, so this is what this editorial says. The editorial is bad, and then they ran an op-ed piece from George Stockyo. It's even worse. And the tip-off, you know, you can go to the last paragraph of George Stockyo's op-ed piece, and he says, but a good start for Congress is to end the humiliating status of second-class citizenship and stop jerking the Chamorro's people around. Anytime you see that word second-class citizenship, you know you're dealing with demagoguery. I've explained it more than once. I can explain it again if you'd like me to. But right now we're going to break for that big halftime show, the marching bands, the drill teams, the synchronized card section up in the grandstand. I'll be back in 6 or 7 minutes.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Horror at a house of worship. I'm Richard Jordan, Fox News. Hundreds of people gathered Sunday night for a vigil to honor the victims of Saturday's synagogue shooting in Poway, California. Danny Peretz described the fear as he scrambled to find his children while the gunshots went off.
All I cared about is finding my kids. I was on the floor crawling to go through the exit because you go through the exit and then there's another entrance to go to where the kids were. So I wanted to go through the exit and run towards my kids and find them.
One woman was killed and 3 people injured in the attack. The synagogue's rabbi was among the victims, shot in the hand, losing a finger.
I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. The Chabad Rebbe, the Grand Lubavitcher Rebbe, was my teacher. I grew up with him, and he taught me that we need to battle darkness with light.
The suspect ran but eventually surrendered to police. He'll be arraigned later this week where he could face a hate crime charge in addition to homicide charges. Former Vice President Joe Biden will make his first campaign speech of the presidential race today. He will speak in Pittsburgh. Pennsylvania may be the hardest fought battleground of the 2020 election. President Trump's campaign is already mapping out a strategy to win Pennsylvania for a second time. Meanwhile, the president's re-election campaign says 4 states that normally vote Democrat could flip. Campaign manager Brad Pascal says New Hampshire, New Mexico, Nevada, and Colorado could be up for grabs.
Those are states we did not win in 2016 and I think are open for 2020.
Pascal on CBS's Face the Nation. He also says the campaign is planning to have 1.6 million volunteers. A jailhouse in southwest Alaska going up in flames and 2 inmates were trapped in their cells. The prisoners died. Officials say they were not able to get free. A guard was seriously injured trying to release them. The blaze reportedly started by a prisoner who set a mattress on fire. This is Fox News.
It's important to have claims process that works for you. At Guahan Insurance Services, we make things simple and convenient. Same door you walk in to purchase your insurance is the same door you open to file your claim. We can't pretend that the car insurance claims process is fun, but we can promise a hassle-free and speedy recovery without any runarounds. For your home, auto, and business insurance, visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center on Marine Corps Drive in Tamuning. Don't forget to like us on Facebook or give us a call at 475-1162 or text 929-SAVE. That's 929-7283.
When your family needs medical care, how often do you find the need to visit multiple clinics? When a child has a serious ailment, do you find yourself meeting a medical provider only to learn you must go somewhere else for testing? At the FHP Health Center, you can find multiple specialties and testing services under one roof. And if your family needs urgent care, FHP is there for you with convenient weekday, evening, and weekend hours. Voted the island's best clinic and Pica's Best 2 years in a row. FHP, our island, your clinic. Learn more at fhpguam.com.
A once viral homeless hero who saved a woman from a would-be attacker now faces life in prison.
Kai, the homeless hitchhiker, gained some online fame in 2013 when he intervened on 2 separate assaults in California, using a hatchet to fend off the attacker.
That woman was in danger. He just finished what looked like at the time killing somebody. And if I hadn't done that, he would have killed more people.
30-year-old Caleb Kai McGilvory, now convicted by a jury in New Jersey of murdering 73-year-old Joseph Galfy Jr., an attorney who, after meeting McGilvory in Times Square that same year, was found days later beaten to death inside his home. McGilvory faces up to life in prison when he's sentenced in June. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
One of the 4 people killed in Saturday's crane collapse in Seattle was a college student. Seattle Pacific University says Sarah Wong was a freshman who intended to major in nursing. 2 iron workers and another person in a car below were killed. Their names are expected to be released later today. An investigation is now looking into 4 companies involved in the construction project. More and more people are skipping that summer vacation.
Looks like we'll have a lot of staycationers in the U.S. this year. A poll from Bankrate.com finds more than a quarter of Americans are not planning a summer getaway. The #1 reason is money. 60% say they cannot afford it, and most are from Generation X. More than 20% of people overall say they're on the fence about going away. Some of the other top reasons folks cannot take that summer break are they can't get the time off, family obligations, or their health and age play a factor into staying home for the season. Ken Duffy, Fox News.
Many Americans need a vacation. A new Gallup survey found 55% of Americans said they experienced a lot of stress in 2018. That's even higher than during the Great Recession. The global average is 35%. The U.S. trailed only Greece, the Philippines, and Tanzania on the stress table. I'm Richard Jordan, and this is Fox News.
Let's go for a drive.
Let's take a stroll. Let's gallivant. Let's go cruising.
We all have different ways to describe how we get up and go in our cars. But whatever you may call it, you can do more of it when you save 6% off your fuel purchases at any Shell station when you use your eligible Bank of Guam Visa and MasterCard credit cards. So stop by any Guam or CNMI Shell station and start saving today. Visit bankofguam.com for more information. Terms and conditions apply. Bank of Guam, the People's Bank. Member FDIC.
Ready to buy real estate on Guam? Congratulations! But what now? There are so many questions, so many things to do. Where do you start? The best place to start is to call Century 21 Commonwealth Realty, Guam's biggest name in real estate. They aren't the best because they're the biggest. They're the biggest because they're the best. Trust the name. Find out why. Call Century 21 Commonwealth Realty today. 888-2121. Trust the best.
What a great show. So here we are again, back with the Daily News op-ed solicitation for today. I got a call from Chris. Before I dive back into this so-called editorial, I'm going to take Chris's call. Hi, Chris.
Have a day, Senator Bob. How was your weekend?
Hey, real good, Chris. Yours?
It was very good as well. Of course, a sad incident in California, and I wanted to make a pithy remark on the point, which I will label missing the point.
Aha, okay.
So, unfortunately, we had another one of those cowardly acts at a synagogue that is being widely covered by the national media. And what's not being widely covered in that mass shooting and possibly hate crime at the synagogue is, while the perpetrator had what I believe in the reporting as a rifle, perhaps something that could, a weapon that could have, done mass casualty, it was a off-duty border security guard with a handgun that actually returned fire to the perpetrator that they're speculating made him exit the building and then eventually surrender. And I say missing the point because as you always open with your excellent monologue to the opening of your show and discussion on the Second Amendment and the rights to bear arms, the issue and the national debate, particularly with the left, is basically consistently about how to limit and reduce, the right to bear arms. And incredibly in this situation, one of the old and most often amongst people who understand the value of being able to defend yourself, one of the oldest and one of the most famous comments I like that is expressed often is, what is the best way to stop an evil or bad person with a weapon? A good person with a weapon, particularly a gun.
Good call, Chris.
So I just wanted to, throw in that pithy comment today, and I'm just really amazed at how much the lack of coverage there is on that particular issue and what happened, supposedly as it's being reported about that incident. And what I find kind of incredible as well is just the constant emphasis on the weapons themselves, as opposed to what took place there. There was an analyst as well that was on the Fox News, one of the reportings, saying that with these cowards, there's only two things that there's two common denominators with these cowards who perpetrate these crimes, and one is they always choose soft targets that they know or pretty much can be can rely on, that there would possibly be no one there that would be armed, or there would be no serious security so that they could carry out their crime. And the second is, obviously, their intention is simply to kill. And so there is no dealing with these type of cowards except for meeting the power that they have with a weapon with equal power.
I couldn't agree more, Chris. I think you are right on point with that. And of course, the left hates to hear things like that, because the mainstream media, rather than reporting the news, will relate its narrative. And,
sure.
And the narrative of the left is that guns are bad, and it follows then that people who favor guns are really, really bad people. And sure. These people who favor guns are so bad that you'd never want them in any kind of political office at all.
Sure.
As you saw with Kamala Harris.
Sure. And, Senator Bob, just a final point, too, that was made by another individual commenting, particularly on the Fox News network, was there's also, you could tell, this severe selective journalism from the left when a similar crime was perpetrated, I believe about a month ago, I believe it was in Australia, where there was a supposed white supremacist who did a similar crime to a mosque. I mean, it was like incessant reporting, particularly on the mainstream media, the left and the far left. Whereas whenever there is a situation like the other day in California, maybe it'll get a couple of days and then it will disappear. And so it's very, very easy to see, what fits the narrative and what will be, what will be covered and how it will be covered and for what reason. But in particular, this situation, once again, you had a brave individual who had training with a weapon, who returned fire and possibly saved lives.
Yeah, Chris, I've occasionally made a comment that there are people who are so dense that they would put a sign on their front yard, "We are a gun-free home." That's the best way. Bad people with guns welcome, no experience necessary.
Yeah. That is an invitation.
Well, thanks a lot you're absolutely right, Chris. You're right on point. I couldn't have said it in clearer terms than the way you laid it out. So thank you very much for calling in today.
Glad to have joined, and thanks for taking my comment. Have a great day, Senator.
Yes, sir, Chris. Former Senator Chris Duenas knows what he's talking about. Okay, so going back to the Sunday Forum here, liberty is pretty close to freedom. They're not exactly the same, but pretty close. And liberty, the question here was, what should the United States do to improve liberty? Well, liberty is something, when it comes to government, it's often not what the government does, it's what the government doesn't do. And if you look at our Bill of Rights, most of it is in prohibitive language, telling what the government is not supposed to do. Government is not supposed to infringe your right to keep and bear arms, right? So this question is just so, I can't get over how, especially taking into consideration what Lee Weber's column, if this is what we have writing the editorials at the Daily News, I can see why they want to run the USA Today stuff. What should the United States do to improve liberty for the people of Guam? Okay, so going back to the editorial. To begin with, Guam remains an unincorporated territory of the United States, which translates into being a colony. Now, of course, the rules are the first person who uses the word colony or colonizer gets to win the argument, pick up the marbles, and go home, right? We're not really considered a true part of America, just a far-flung outpost. Well, I'll demur to that. A demur means, well, even if what you say is true, so what? What has that got to do with the subject here? What has it got to do with liberty? Some of the rights guaranteed to citizens of the United States by the Constitution apply to those who call Guam home, but not all. Now, which ones are the rights guaranteed in the Constitution don't apply here on Guam? I'll tell you what the answer is. None. And while I'm at it, I gotta once again point out that obviously the editorial writer doesn't know what he's talking about, because I mentioned the 14th Amendment. No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. You notice it doesn't say no citizen, it says no person. So the protection of rights in the United States Constitution that we enjoy here in Guam don't go to people because they're citizens. It goes to people, persons. Any person within the jurisdiction of the territory of Guam is entitled to all these rights. And let me just go through them here kind of quickly. The Organic Act, as enacted in 1958, as you were, 1950, 48 United States Code, Section 1421B. Bill of Rights. A, no law shall be enacted in Guam respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom. You know how that one goes, right? B, no soldier shall be in time of peace be quartered in any house, etc. C, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, etc. against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be, you know how that one goes, right? Right on down to E. No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. That was in the Organic Act as adopted 1950. To make sure that it was covered, Congress amended the Organic Act in 1968 by adding the so-called Mink Amendments. And that's at 48 U.S.C. 1421B-U. The following provisions of amendments to the Constitution of the United States are hereby extended to Guam to the extent that they have not been previously extended to that territory and shall have the same force and effect there as in the United States or in any state of the United States. Article 1, Section 9, et cetera, et cetera. And then the second sentence of Section 1, as you were, the first to ninth amendments inclusive. So the first through the ninth amendments are all included, including the second. And then the second sentence of Section 1 of the 14th Amendment, the 15th and 19th Amendments. So the 14th Amendment, no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. That's liberty. And it says the government shall not deprive you of your life, your liberty, or your property without due process of law. Now we have the rule of law here on Guam. We have court. The courts are open. We have what amounts to a United States District Court. Cases can go from here to the United States Supreme Court. We have our local court system. We have all of the adjuncts necessary for a government to protect citizens, and we have as much liberty as a government can provide, because liberty is, again, a negative sort of thing. It's not what the government, it's kind of like Sherlock Holmes and the dog, real Joe Cruz. When Sherlock Holmes solved that murder case, what was it that the dog did?
It's what he didn't do.
What didn't he do?
He didn't bark.
Uh-huh. So it's kind of the same thing with liberty. When the government doesn't do things, that's liberty. So we have liberty here in Guam. We have as much liberty as there is. Liberty is a concept. So this is about the dumbest question, I think, that I've ever seen the Daily News pose for one of its Sunday forums. And it caused me to wonder, is this part of the Zen-inspired group politics, gaslighting approach necessary to take us from where we are to independence so that we could have true liberty, you know, the Socialist Republic of Guam? Is it that? Is there some intent to do that? Or is it an example of what psychologists would refer to as the Dunning-Kruger effect? And I'll tell you a little bit about the Dunning-Kruger effect. David Dunning wrote about his observations that people with substantial, measurable deficits in their knowledge or expertise lack the ability to recognize those deficits, and therefore, despite potentially making error after error, tend to think they are performing competently when they are not. In short, those who are incompetent, for lack of a better term, would have little insight into their incompetence, an assertion that has come to be known as the Dunning-Kruger effect. So is this silly question, and the Daily News' even sillier attempt to answer it in the Sunday Forum, is there something sinister here, or is it just an example of the Dunning-Kruger effect? That whoever is responsible for this doesn't know. Now, here you need to help me again, Real Joe Cruz. Doesn't know what he or she.
They.
Oh, that person doesn't know what they are doing.
Correct, sir.
Yeah, very good. So they come up with stuff like this. It's hypocritical for the land of liberty, a beacon of democracy, to continue to exercise this uneven, unjust policy in the territories. Uneven, unjust policy, which means that people in the territory of Guam have the same liberty that people living in any of the 50 states. Now, the editorial writer gets confused between political rights and civil rights. Civil rights are a matter of constitutional law and are ordinarily matters of national citizenship. That's the way it works here. Political rights are matters of state citizenship. All the political power is in the states. And if you've heard some of my lectures about the national government versus the federal government, you'd understand why that is. That we started out with 13 independent countries who ceded some of their authority to a central government, but maintained their own sovereignty. And it's those 13, which have grown now to 50, where the power of the government is supposed to reside, and that's where the political power of the government resides. The civil rights of the people in the United States, even far-flung outposts, is a function of the national Constitution, and I've taken you through the provisions that apply here. So there are a couple of straw man fallacies in this editorial. Here's another one. It is hypocritical for the land of liberty, a beacon of democracy, to continue this exercise, this uneven, unjust policy in the territories. And what is the unjust policy when it comes to liberty? There is none. And then the next sentence, to compound this shortfall in true liberty and equality, the people of Guam are denied a real voice in the national government. What's that got to do with liberty? Nothing. Straw man. It would be an ad hominem attack if Congress were a man, but of course we know that they are not a man, right? So, you know, there are those who would make arguments about political status, independence, etc. Fine, but don't confuse your readers, Daily News, and address those in the concept of liberty, because that's not what liberty means. So if we're going to have decent discussions on these important topics, rule number one, you kind of got to know what you're talking about. And from reading this editorial, I'm pretty much convinced that somebody in the Daily News editorial shop doesn't know what he's talking about. So I don't know which is preferable, running some of the left-wing stuff from USA Today or some of the Dunning-Kruger stuff that's homemade. I guess I'll leave that up to your readers. I'm not going to go into George Stocky's historical list of grievances. Just to go back and mention, but a good start is for Congress to end the humiliating status of second-class citizenship. There is no such thing as a second-class citizen here on the island. I've been through that one more than once before. If you are a United States citizen, you are entitled to all of the rights and privileges that go with that citizenship, whether you're here in the mainland or wherever else you are. And I pointed out before, you read the Constitution and find the constitutional right to vote. You won't find it in there. What you do find is the schematic for a governmental system composed of states with the political power vested in the states. If the, and I would say this, the United States is an imperialist country, and it has been probably since the Spanish-American War, if not the Civil War. But the founders never thought along those lines. If they had, they perhaps could have designed a government that would have let far-flung outposts have political participation. But they didn't. And it's not a matter for Congress to change. If you want to change it, you got to change the Constitution by amendment. I don't think that it's reasonable for 160,000 people to think that all of the political rights that would go with any one of the states, including the smallest, would necessarily accrue to 160,000 people here. As I say over and over again, our biggest problems are two big problems: how many of us there are and where we are. Not who we are, but how many and where. So, unfortunately, this came up on a Sunday. If it hadn't come up on a Sunday, I would have given it an F-, because it's one of the worst I think I've ever seen come from the Daily News. And that says a lot. Okay, so I think the next thing I'm going to do is take a gander through Facebook and see how much our international Facebook audience is enjoying Tall Tales Today. Measure the degrees of enjoyment. See what I can do to how I can give you more enjoyment.
Welcome back.
So Ishmael Velez, see, is that his first one? I think somebody beat, oh yeah, he's replying to James. James Howard, half a day, Judge Bob and the Rangers. Now, James Howard is referring to the Triple J Rangers, himself and a couple of other guys, right? And Ishmael says, Rangers are strangers. James Howard says, earthquake. Ishmael comes back with, people are strange when you're a stranger. And I suppose that's true. And then James Howard comes back, Tall Tales rules for life. Yes. Pierre, good afternoon, Judge. James Howard, can you smell what the judge is cooking? Nate horns in and says, everyone is a responsible gun owner until they're not. I suppose it's hard to argue with that proposition. Pierre says de Gaulle used to call the United Nations that huge gas factory. And I would probably join, I would probably say oui to that because I agree 100%, Pierre. I guess we should call Ocasio-Cortez that since she seems to be the self-appointed expert on flatulence. It's part of her Green New Deal. She wants to do away with cows because cattle flatulence make a significant contribution to global warming. And let's see. Oh, it's time for the Jack Haddock search, also known as the seventh inning stretch. Okay, we'll go to the seventh inning stretch and I'll come back and look at the Facebook a little bit more.
So what's the deal? Are you still paying for the right to have your checking account at your bank? Well, at Bank Pacific, we think it's our privilege, not our right. That's why we offer My Green Free Checking, where your monthly maintenance checking fees are zero. That's zero. And it comes with a free Visa check card and monthly green e-statements. My Green Free Checking. Bank Pacific today. Because having you as our customer, that's our privilege.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender, member FDIC. Viva Bank Pacific.
Are you thinking of going into business for yourself? Or maybe you're a solo entrepreneur, but you feel you lack something, a certain skill or number of skills. You haven't moved forward with your idea because you're just unsure if you can pull it off? I'm Jerry Robertson. At 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, we're going to give you a couple of ideas that might help you get closer to what you're after.
Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
And Jack Haddock is nowhere to be seen. But we're going to keep looking, Jack. Okay, back to Facebook here. Ishmael Velez comes along and says, I confess. Now, I wonder if he's confessing to the post that Pierre's post just above his, where he's talking about flatulence, or if Ismail is confessing to owning a firearm. Let's assume that he owns a firearm. I think he could be forgiven because he's a regular member of the Tall Tales posse here, so I think he can be forgiven. Go back up here a second. Oh. Yeah, Albert Eliason owned and used several responsibly, still able to squeeze a trigger if required. No need to confess, Albert. You're a Marine. We understand. And then A. Camacho at Brain Surgeon. Okay. And James Howard sounds like the old bump stock gate. Old bump stock gate. Shelley Gibson, tell your friends and family in the States not to vote for dipsticks. In other words, cast a straight Republican ballot, Shelley, I guess. Shelley Gibson. Hey, Mr. Klitzkie. What up? Well, I'm still here. Still jabbering away, Shelley. James Howard goes back to my idea about the showers and the bunkhouse, etc., and just says sharing soap. And then Mike, is where Pierre reminds me that it's Mike Lindell and his My Pillow. Yeah, I see Mike Lindell more on the screen than I see Jack McCoy. I'm a Law and Order buff. James Howard, Tom. We haven't had a call from any of the Toms today. That's unusual. Yeah, we kind of look forward to our Toms. Usually make a pretty good addition to the show. Jose Martinez, homeless not welcome in Dadido. The mayor has ceased daily feeding of the poor and homeless at the Dadido Senior Citizen Center, effective immediately. Joe Cruz, that's one heck of a cookie duster you got there, Bob. Well, we do what we can with what we got, James. James Howard, all the same propaganda. It just depends on who's steering the ship, Judge. Well, I suppose that's true, and it's very difficult for anyone to report on something without inserting his own particular viewpoint into what he observed. And honest commentators will make it absolutely clear that they are commentators, not reporters. Awful lot of people hold themselves out as reporters when actually what they are is commentators. I won't mention any names, but the WAPO and the New York Times are right on top of that list. James Howard, paid to play news organizations for profit. Tyler Flores, I am not too particularly sure that it's about being informed previously on a certain situation. It's more of the demeanor of coming on these opinions as facts, which would cause confusion. Coming off as some sort of a hybrid Alex Jones. I'm sure you're a cool dude and he doesn't say, he stops at and Well, he's right. I am a cool dude. You got that one right there, Tyler Flores. On the and I'm going to reserve judgment. James Howard comes, yes. And Jose Martinez, liberty for the people of Guam. Are the people of Guam not free? Absolutely. Where do we get off with that one? I can't get over it. The question. What should the United States do to improve liberty for the people of Guam? How about giving them another decent daily newspaper? Wouldn't that work? But of course, the United States can't do that. Governments should never try to run newspapers because it takes. You have to be independent, and you have to be able to tell unfortunate truths if necessary. Ishmael Velez. If it's they, then it has to be Easter worshipers. I'm going to get to that whole Easter worshiper thing in the card if I get down that far. If I don't get there today, I'll get there tomorrow. James Howard, liberty is in the eyes of the beholder. Certainly beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. I don't know that one... I suppose a person could be fooled into thinking that he lived in a society with the blessing of liberty when in fact he wasn't, maybe. And then Jesse Limtiaco, the left, ha ha. Yeah, maybe that's it. Pierre, only 2 of the 3 today. So only 2 of the 3 Triple J Rangers showed up today. Jesse Limtiaco, change the Constitution, the Organic Act, especially the part about only Congress. I lost that one. I'll come back. I'll get it in just a second here. Yeah, he says, change the Constitution Organic Act, especially the part that only Congress can amend it. Well, believe it or not, there was a bill introduced into the legislature, in the 28th legislature, that would have patriated the Organic Act. Patriate means that Congress would have said, from now on, the Organic Act is your Constitution, and you can amend it. And that bill had the method for going about amending it, so that in effect we could, the Organic Act would be amendable locally. I think that was a great bill, for the obvious reason, but I wasn't able to get enough support to move it forward. The nationalists hated it, because the nationalists, the independentia, don't want anything that would improve our particular situation now. It's one of those kind of like Vladimir Lenin, the worse things get, the better things are. So there was the same with adopting our own Constitution. The nationalists hated it. They fought it tooth and nail. And it's one of the things that holds us back. Okay. Jesse Limtiaco goes on to say, does the U.S. Congress give us due process by not letting us have a voting representative? Yes. Let me repeat that, and let me repeat the answer. Does the U.S. Congress give us due process by not letting us have a voting representative? The answer to that question is yes. And what does due process mean? Well, we go back again to the book. No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. So when you're talking about deprivation of life, liberty, or property, the due process clause kicks in. A voting representative in Congress is a political right. And I keep hammering away, the Bill of Rights doesn't speak to political rights. Some of the later amendments have some prohibitive language that would protect a political right if it already exists. But not being able to vote for someone in Congress is not a denial of due process under any stretch of the imagination. I know it would be, it fits into, we talked about narratives a little earlier. The narrative, that's a smart money over there. We're just second-class citizens here on Guam. We can't vote. Uncle Sam should give us the right to vote. Well, Uncle Sam can't do that, and for the reasons that I have so laboriously explained. But it doesn't mean that there's a lack of liberty here on our island. Going on to Pierre. To have a voting representative, you need to be a state. Well, to have a voting representative, yeah, political rights are properties of the states. Nate horns in. The first rule of the Dunning-Kruger Club, you don't know you're in the Dunning-Kruger Club. You're right. So, you could interrogate, you could swear somebody in, as though the Dunning-Kruger Club were a subversive organization. Sir, are you a member of the Dunning-Kruger Club? Oh, I don't know. Very good, Nate. James Howard, how about if you are a U.S. citizen being questioned in a foreign country with no access to counsel? Is that infringing on liberty in the case of waterboarding? Now, I got to, once again, I got to try to figure this out here. How about if you are a U.S. citizen being questioned in a foreign country with no access to counsel, meaning a lawyer, is that infringing on liberty in the case of waterboarding? Well, I guess a lot depends on who's doing the waterboarding, doesn't it? If you want to, I would address that, James, if you want to phrase it a little bit more clearly. I will take that on. Pierre, we are in a similar situation as Hawaii or Alaska or any other territory in the USA prior to becoming a state. Well, actually, we're better off than Hawaii and Alaska were, because the first time Hawaii ever elected a governor was after it became a state. Up until 1959, the president appointed the governor of Hawaii and Alaska. They were territories. So we've been electing our governor since 1970s, who actually were better off. Second, Hawaii and Alaska, during the entire time that they were territories, paid United States income tax, just like folks in Illinois or Kansas. They didn't have that mirror image deal that we have, that sweetheart deal that we have. So it was a classic case for them of taxation without representation. For us, you know, we have a delegate in Congress, got an office in the Rayburn building, all the perks that come with being a congressman, sits on important committees, can log a roll with the rest, converting committee votes, etc. But we don't pay taxes. So for us, it's not taxation without representation. It's representation without taxation. You know, so much of the narrative that one hears nowadays just doesn't stand up to very much analysis. And by the way, concerning Hawaii, when we had our first constitutional convention here back in, I think it was 69, 68 maybe, one of the proposals on the floor of the Constitutional Convention was to petition the state of Hawaii and the United States government for Hawaii to annex Guam as one of its counties. So as a county of Hawaii, people would get to vote. You'd get to vote for president. You would have representation, voting representation in the House and in the Senate. Of course, in the Senate, it would be Mazie Hirono. I don't want to discourage anybody, but yeah, but that would be the way to do it. Now, who would be in favor of that? That didn't get to first base during that first. No, then we would just be part of Hawaii. So if the object is, well, we'd like to have the same political rights as any person living in one of the states, then I think Pierre is kind of right. I kind of got to be a state, unless a massive amendment, a massive change to the structure of government could be brought about by a constitutional amendment. I think the chances of that aren't even between slim and none. Let me go back here for a second. Pierre says, try to stay focused. Albert Eliasson, please let me know how you view the push for criminals to have voting rights, especially viewed in light of Section 2 of the 14th Amendment regarding exceptions for abridgment of voting. Well, I'm in favor of it. I don't think that criminals should be allowed to vote. And as far as Section 2 of the 14th Amendment is concerned, let me read it. Representatives shall be apportioned among the several states according to their respective numbers, counting the whole number of persons in each state, excluding Indians not taxed. but when the right to vote in any election for the choice of electors for president, vice president, etc., is denied to any of the male inhabitants of such state being 21 years of age and citizens of the United States or in any way abridged except for participation in rebellion or other crime. Does that answer your question, Albert? Yeah. Jesse Lemtiako. So it's okay to rule over people if you give them liberty. Well, so it's okay to ask loaded questions like, are you still beating your wife? Jesse, this is called begging the question. You often hear that term misused, even talk show hosts misuse it. Begging the question. Well, let me come back and address this in the home stretch.
Docomo Pacific's all-new business bundles provide tailored solutions to help your business become a better business. Choose from our Business Basic, Essential, or Value bundles and get unlimited talk and text, worry-free data at home and abroad, plus access to the fastest online speeds in the Marianas. Add on mobile or broadband lines and save up to 20% for each line. Email businesssales@docomopacific.com to find out which bundle provides the best solution for your business. Terms and conditions apply.
Attention homeowners, if you don't have a solar energy system on your roof from Micronesia Renewable Energy, now is the time to get one. MRE solar energy systems now come with battery storage for zero money down. This means that your home will have power even when the island power isn't available, like during power outages or during and after storms. The inconvenience of not having power for your home is a thing of the past. Don't be left in the dark. Call 632-2613 for a free consultation. MRE, the smarter choice.
So here we go. We're on the home stretch now. That means I've got a little less than 8 minutes to close up another exciting, insightful, educational, thrilling episode of Tall Tales. And I was, before the break there, I was dealing with this, Jesse Lemtiako. So it's okay to rule over people if you give them liberty. And I'm pointing out to Jesse, that is the logical fallacy called begging the question, where the question is, the basis of the question is an unproven proposition, or perhaps an ambiguous proposition. And the question is phrased based on the, let's say, ambiguous proposition. As an example, Real Joe Cruz, are you still beating your wife? So if the Real Joe Cruz says, no, I'm not still beating my wife. Well, when did you stop? Or the Real Joe Cruz says, I don't want to, I don't want to get trapped into that, so I'll just answer yes. Aha. So that's your question. So is it okay to rule over people if you give them liberty? Well, what you've got here, Jesse, is at least ambiguous, and I'm not going to sign up for the ambiguity until you tell us exactly what you mean by, is it okay to rule over people? Then maybe I'll come back and take a crack at it. Okay, so although we can't find Jack Haddock, and we haven't had a call from any of our Toms today, we've got our Carl on the line. Hello, our Carl.
Hey, Bob. Good afternoon.
Sir.
Yeah, I was listening with interest on and off as I was driving around getting things done this afternoon. Very interesting show. I don't know if anyone's pointed out, or you may have pointed out, but in case no one has pointed out yet, we have tens of thousands of Chamorros that have relocated to the States. and many of them have lived there for many years. They've established a new life. They have homes.
But aren't they second-class citizens, Carl?
Well, that's one thing I wanted to point out. They have exactly identical rights in every single way in the states. I mean, they can vote for president. Did they go from being second-class citizens to, when they moved to the mainland, being first-class citizens? And contrary, do people coming from the states and move out here, do they suddenly become second-class citizens? Now, if they write to their state and they ask for an absentee ballot, then they can't vote. But most of them, a lot of them don't bother to do that.
Well, they can only, Carl, correction, you can only get an absentee ballot if you're still a resident of that state. If you live here, you can't.
Oh, okay, so if you change your residency. Okay, I didn't know that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and another thing I wanted to take up is the idea of sovereignty. I think that is being strongly pushed. We need our sovereignty, and, you know, this is, if only we had sovereignty, you know, everything would be beautiful. But sovereignty without personal freedoms is absolutely worthless, and all we have to do is ask citizens of, you know, countless socialist countries. Primary example right now is Venezuela. Venezuela is a sovereign country. China is a sovereign country. They treat their citizens absolutely horribly. I can give you horror stories of how they treat the Uyghur Muslims and the people in Tibet. I mean, it's just horrible. But they're sovereign countries. And the question I have to ask is, are we willing to put the most precious things we have, other than our souls, which is our personal freedoms in the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments of the Constitution, are we willing to risk that in moving to sovereignty? Because that would, in my opinion, be too great of a risk, because the changing of our Constitution would be in the hands of 15 senators and a governor. Can we guarantee that at some point in the future, 10, 20, 30, 40 years down the road, what quality of leadership are we going to get? And how will they view our personal freedoms? The amendments in the Constitution, there have been over 11,000 amendments proposed since the Constitution was ratified. Only 27 of those have actually made it through. So it's very hard to tinker with the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. It's like titanium. And that's how I like to treat our personal freedoms. I think they're priceless, and millions of people, you know, all the way through World War II have fought to establish and defend those. So anyway, that's my thoughts on that.
Okay, Carl. Thanks for chiming in. Okay, then I'm going back here to Jesse Limtiaco. The disturbing thing to me is I am an American. That is the bottom line. Well, that's true. If you're an American, you are an American, wherever you are, whatever you happen to be doing. You can't stop being an American. It's very difficult. I'm subject to paying taxes, and if I evade my taxes, I will be taken to federal court, not local court, correct? Well, it depends on which taxes you're not paying, Jesse. Also, why do I need to reside in a state to vote? Well, the reason that you need to reside in a state to vote is because that's what the Constitution has said from the very beginning, that all the political power is within the states. And then you go on to say, America penalizes me for living in it because I live in a U.S. possession. That's absurd, in my opinion. Well, America doesn't penalize anybody for living in a territory, and I think your standard of absurdity is ridiculously low, Jesse. But come on back tomorrow. We'll pick this up tomorrow. Okay, well, that's it for another exciting day here on Tall Tales. I'm going to sign off for myself and for the ever-popular Real Joe Cruz. Say goodbye, Joe. A little louder, please.
Thank you. Goodbye.
There you go. The Real Joe Cruz.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam.